Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Scarecrow, and welcome to Closet Movie Rambles, where I talk about old movies that I found in my closet while cleaning. This week's movie is Terminator 2, Judgment Day. It was written and directed by James Cameron, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, and Robert Patrick. It was made in 1991, it's an action movie, and it's about 2 hours and 26 minutes long. And the movie starts with a girl on a swing and a bright flash. And cutting to the text, Los Angeles 2029, and it's a ruined war zone. So what happened was, as Sarah explains, one of the main characters, that in 1997, of August 29th, there was an AI system called Skynet that basically went rogue and turned on humanity without warning or anything. And the movie kind of shows this really cool special effects with robot skeletons called Terminators and big tanks fighting humans. And there's really good special effects like lasers and stuff. Can't get better than that, you know. And yeah, and then they kind of introduce. They go through the credits of the movie, who made it and whatnot, and the playground is on fire and the swings are kind of going forward and back with everything's burning. And from the flames, one of these Terminator face or skulls comes out and the title pops up. And then the real movie starts. So we cut to the arrival of the T-101. T-101, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. So basically what happened is these Terminators are sent back in time from the future to either kill or protect John Connor, which is the leader of the resistance, or the one who is supposed to be the leader of the resistance. And for some reason, the Terminators arrive naked because you can't take anything through when you do time travel. So not any metal pieces and stuff, but if it's encased by flesh and blood, it kind of works. And well, first Terminator, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, arrives, and he's naked, and he goes to inquire clothes and weapons and stuff. So he goes into this biker bar, and he kind of scans the place, and every girls are looking at him like, ooh, and boys are like, what is going on? Some kind of joke or something. And he goes up to a guy and he finds the matching clothes. So he just says to him, I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. And they kind of laugh at him. And one of the guys takes a cigarette and burns his chest, but since he's a machine, he doesn't react, and he kind of kicks the ass out of everyone. And he takes the clothes and boots and he leaves. And he's supposed to jump on this motorcycle, and this one guy comes up with a shotgun, and I think he fires off a shot, and he says like, I can't let you take this man's bike. And the Terminator just goes up to him, and he just takes his shotgun out of his hand and takes his sunglasses, he just put them on, and then he rides away from it. It's kind of a cool scene. And then the next scene is the other Terminator arriving, the T-1000, the T-1000, whatever, it's the same thing. It's he's a Terminator made out of liquid metal, so he can basically take the shape of any shape of similar size. And he arrives, and he kills a cop, and he looks up John Connor on the police computer and goes after him, basically. And then we cut to John Connor and his friend fixing up a bike, basically a little small moped bike kind of thing. And Janelle, which is John's one of John's foster parents, tells him to clean his room because it looks like a pigsty, but he doesn't listen to her because she's not her real mom, which we'll find out later. And Janelle goes to tell John's stepdad or whatever, foster parents, Todd, his name's Todd, just to do the same. Just, John, go clean up your room, do as your mother says. And John replies like, she's not my mom, Todd. And then him and his friend leaves on the bike. And then we cut to Sarah Connor, which is John's mom, at it's an insane asylum or something. basically because in the first movie she was confronted by the Terminator, and nobody believes that they're actually this thing is not going to happen. The attack of the machines and all this rogue AI, and I mean, who wouldn't believe her? Nothing has been seen, nothing has been proven that these Terminators even exists. And she's just in her cell doing pull-ups on the bed or something, and there is a doctor, or kind of the doctor that is responsible for her treatment, and he walks in with a group of like attendants, or a group of other scientists and doctors, and he basically tells the story of what Sarah has been telling him and her about her psychosis and whatnot. And they arrive at her cell, and the doctor pushed in on the talk button. There's like a microphone or a speaker, and how are you doing, Sarah? And she replies, how's the knees? How are your knees? Or something like that, because she kind of broke it or hurt him because she's trying to escape from this mental asylum. I think it's called a woman's ward or something, but she's failed obviously. And then they leave, and then the two guards comes in, and she's supposed to take her medicine, but she refuses, and they hit her down to the ground and tase her, I think, and they force down the pills down the throat. It's kind of this over brutality thing that's going on. Maybe because she's done it in the past, and they're not, like, how do you say, they're very careful about her because she's kind of dangerous. And then we cut to T-1000 at John's foster parents' place, and he basically goes in and asks if either of them have seen John. And then the foster parents, because T-1000 is taking the shape of a cop, it looks like a cop, they ask if he's in trouble or done something. No, I just want to ask him a few questions. And has this anything to do, Todd says, has this anything to do with the big biker that went by here earlier? And he said, no, I wouldn't worry about him. And then you can kind of piece together that T-1000 is the bad Terminator that wants John dead, and the other one, played by Arnold, is actually the good guy. Yeah. And then we cut to John. He's using a stolen credit card to steal some money so he can have, go with his friends and just do the town basically, fill the motorcycle up with gas and just go for a ride, joyriding. And then we enter, like, this is a dream state of Sarah. She's basically, due to the pills she's taking, she's hallucinating, and she sees her former lover Kyle, which is actually John's father, and it's kind of strange and convoluted, but yeah. And he kind of leaves, and she follows, and she goes outside. And of course, it's a dream. She goes outside, and she sees the same flashback as before. There's this swing and the explosion and everything, and then she wakes up. And then there's an interrogation of Sarah. Basically, she's been interrogated, and this has happened before multiple times. The doctor kind of interrogates her, and if she behaved, she was supposed to be able to meet John, talk to him, or something like that, or at least get a phone call. And then we cut to Miles Dyson at Cyberdyne Systems, and there's this intern that keeps bugging him about, can I see the stuff and all this that we're working on? And Miles says, no, you can't. Miles is basically the head of this Cyberdyne division. They work on the ship from the first Terminator movie. The first Terminator from the first Terminator movie. And it's kind of like, it's future technology, so they don't yet understand it. So he goes into this vault thing, and you have to have two keys to open. One guard has one, and Miles has the other, and they open up. And he looks at the chip, and he looks at the Terminator hand that got salvaged from the garbage press in the first movie. And then we cut to John and his friend riding down to the mall to play some arcade, because that's what you did in the late 80s and early 90s. So they played these arcade games, and Arnold's Terminator character kind of thing. He goes down there, and he's looking for John, obviously, and T-1000 is also on his way there to look for John. And his friend goes, John's friend goes to find some quarters because, you know, he doesn't have quarters. He needs quarters to play games. So T-1000 kind of confronts his friend and says, "Have you seen this kid?" It's one of the pictures he got from Todd and Janelle in the foster parents of John. And he says, "No, I haven't seen him." And his friend runs back to John and says, "You have to bail because the cops are looking for you." And John kind of bails. So he runs down to the basement to get his bike and get out of there. And then he gets confronted by Arnold, the Terminator, the T-Terminator, T-101. And Arnold says to John, "Get down." And he starts to fire at the T-1000, which is behind John. And there's this other employee guy that gets caught in the crossfire. And basically there's a fight between the T-1000 and Arnold's Terminator. And John runs down to the garage to get his bike. And T-1000 kind of gets the upper hand, and he throws John, Arnold's Terminator through a window. And there is a tourist or something that takes pictures of Arnold as he's lying there in the glass. And this comes into play later. And then the T-1000 chases down back to the garage again to get John. John gets on a bike, and the T-1000 kind of chase him down the road, but he gets away. And he steals a truck, and he follows John down through these they're basically dried out canals, so he basically drives down the canal after John. And his bike, he has a small like motorcycle bike. It's not a heavy engine, so he kind of catches up to him. And meanwhile Arnold has taken his motorcycle, and he's basically chasing down. And there's like this chase scene, and John, the Terminator, played by Arnold, kind of picks up John, and so he drives away, and the T-1000 kind of crash into like a bridge, kind of like a thing, like a concrete thing, and it explodes. The truck explodes because why not? And they kind of drive away, and they drive for a bit. And then John tells the Terminator to stop and explain what's happened. And then, because Arnold kind of explains like, okay, this is a Terminator and it's made out of liquid metal, we can't really kill him, we just have to run. And then the T-1000, and John and Arnold kind of drives away. And then T-1000 kind of comes out of the flames of the truck unscathed, and he steals a cop car. And then we cut back to John and the Terminator, and John just want to check up on his foster parents, even if they're dicks. He says, I want to check up on Janelle and Todd. And he calls him up on a payphone. But the Terminator kind of knows that they're being compromised, because that's the first thing that a T-1000 would do, like kill him and copy them. The same thing, because fooling John, killing John is the only objective the T-1000 has. But John calls Janelle, and she picks up the phone. She's in the kitchen making dinner, and she says she's worried about him, but she's never worried, John says. Like the Terminator kind of knows what's happening already. So Janelle, supposedly Janelle, but it's the T-1000, tells John to come home, and she's worried. And outside the dog is barking, and the Terminator asks John, "What's the name of the dog?" And John kind of covers the phone. He says, "It's the name of the dog. It's Max." And then the Terminator takes the phone and he imitates the voice of John. Hey Janelle, what's wrong with Wolfie? Why is he barking? There's nothing wrong with Wolfie. He's fine. And then the Terminator hangs up. Your foster parents are dead. And basically, while this conversation over the phone is happening, the T-1000 has killed Todd, and he later goes out to kill the dog. I think this is in the director's cut, because he goes outside and he kind of kills the dog. Find out by the color of the dog that the dog, its name is Max, so you know that he's been fooled. and then we cut back to Sarah at the institute, because there's some agents or detectives investigating this Terminator thing, because the photos that were taken earlier by the tourists matches up. The person in the photos is similar to the pictures that were taken just this at the moment, like at the mall. They kind of coincide and look the same as the pictures from '84 or something, from the first movie. So they ask Sarah like what she knows, but she stays quiet, kind of fooling them, and you get nothing out of this person, the doctor says, and they leave, and Sarah kind of steals a paper clip, and then John and the Terminator kind of argues, and the Terminator kind of hold him to calm him down, and John screams for help, and some guys comes up to him, and John realizes that the Terminator kind of follows his orders, so he just tells him to let go, and he lets go. And then the two guys, one black, one white guy, comes up to John and says like, "Are you okay? You need help or something?" "No, just take a hike." And "Oh, whatever, you dipshit." One of the guys tells John, "You calling me a dipshit?" says John, and then he tells the Terminator to kind of like kick their asses, and he does. But the Terminator is also about to kill one of them, and John kind of stops it, and they run away, or John tells them to get out of there. And John basically explains to the Terminator that you can't just go around and killing people, and also that because John kind of sent back this Terminator, reprogrammed it to protect him in the past, so he wouldn't get killed. So he basically tells the Terminator to, because he was following orders, like, "I'm going to save my mom, and you're gonna help me do it," even though it's a risky plan, because the T-1000 is kind of after Sarah as well at this point. So and then cut to T-1000. He's already at the institute looking for Sarah, and he basically kills a guard, and he's looking for Sarah. But Sarah kind of has escaped because she has this paperclip. She's about to escape. One of the guards actually, it's kind of a gruesome or disgusting scene. He kind of ties her down, and he licks her on the cheek, because he's kind of a creep, weird, kind of fat, kind of stereotypical weird guy. And then he leaves the room, and Sarah kind of cracks the restraints on her bed, and she kind of escapes. And the T-1000 kills a guard, and she takes a broom, part of a broom head or something, and hit the creep, takes his keys and baton, and then she tries to escape, and she steals like a syringe or something and holds her doctor hostage at a checkpoint. And meanwhile this is happening, there's a lot of things happening. John and the Terminator arrives at the prison gate of the asylum, or the women's care center where Sarah is. And the Terminator has promised John that he won't kill anyone, so he basically just shoots the guard in the kneecaps, and he says he will live. They drive in there, and so basically it goes south for Sarah. She tries to escape, and then she has to run from the guys, and then out of nowhere, actually, John and the Terminator kind of arrives, and Sarah kind of freaks out because she has only seen the Terminator from the first encounter. She knows what it's capable of when it's bad. She doesn't know that this is one of the good guys. And John kind of arrives and explains to his mom that it's alright, it's okay. And then T-1000 arrives, and he walks through some solid bars, and then the Terminator and T-1000 kind of open fire upon each other, and John and Sarah and the Terminator runs into the elevator. The T-1000 follows, and he changes his arms to like these kind of crowbar things, and he bends up the door, but Arnold kind of fires right up at him, so he just retaliates, and the elevator goes down. But the T-1000 kind of opens the door again and jumps down on top of it, and he starts moving his metal hands because he can shape it like to stabbing weapons and stuff. So he kind of stabs down the elevator, and both Sarah and Terminator kind of open fire upon him, and Sarah gets cut in the arm, and then they escape down to the garage area where Sarah stops a police car, and they get in that and they kind of escape, and then the T-1000 is following them and kind of gets up on the trunk and kind of claws his way up, and then there is this driving sequence, and the Terminator kind of shoots down the T-1000 just before it can get to John, and then they drive on a bit, and Sarah kind of scolds John because I taught you better than this. You're not supposed to come for me. I'm kind of expendable. And then John cries because he only wanted to save his mom. And then the Terminator kind of sees this and he says like, "What's wrong with your eyes?" Because he doesn't understand emotion because he's a machine. No, there's nothing wrong with my eyes. Nothing. And then they stop for repairs. And then they stop for repairs, and basically the Terminator kind of sews up Sarah because of her injury in the arm or shoulder, and Sarah kind of removes the bullets from within the Terminator, and then the Terminator kind of comes up on topic that he has a learning kind of processor, so it's switched off during the missions because he's not supposed to think about or analyze things. So they kind of open up the Terminator's head. This is in the director's cut, not in the original movie, I think. So they kind of drill up his head and they remove the processor, and there's an argument between John and his mom, and whether or not it's safe or not. Meanwhile, this is happening. The Terminator is off, so he doesn't hear that. Sarah's about to smash the processor and end it all, but we need him because the other guy's also kind of, he's relentless. So they basically turn the ship on, and it basically reads so he can learn things, and it's basically put back in, and he wakes up. And later, the next morning, they steal a new car, and they and then John kind of tries to teach the Terminator now how things work. So the Terminator kind of hot wires the car, and then John shows him like on top of the mirror you fall down, there's like always keys there, look for those first. Are we learning yet? And he's like no. And then on the way John kind of teach the Terminator like bad language, and he says like no problemo and dickwad, and the famous line, "Hasta la vista, baby." If you want to be really cool, you say all these things and variations of it. And it's kind of funny because Arnold has this like abridged language, or kind of like this broken English already, kind of like, it's just funny him saying it, I guess. It's kind of funny. And then they stop for another repair or just to get food. And the Terminator kind of has to put in cooling water into the car or something, and they kind of see, and the Terminator kind of teaches, or John teaches the Terminator how to smile. He kind of emulates a guy's smile, and then you see like he tries to get his mouth up because he's a machine, and when he smiles, it actually shows just his teeth, so he kind of looks like a horse. And I thought it was so funny. It's like, it's funny, kind of okay, sure he's trying, but you're not getting it. You'll get there. And then later there's some kids fighting, with plastic guns like kids do, and they kind of argue amongst each other, and John kind of asked the Terminator like, we won't make it, would we as humans? And he said no, it's in your nature to destroy each other, it's in your genes. And then they fixes the car, and they move on. And then Sarah asks the Terminator about Miles Dyson, because he's the one responsible for this whole war, like the whole making the system, the Terminators and everything. he explains about it, how, when, and why, when all these things will happen. And then we cut to Dyson at home. He's working in front of his computer and he tried to crack this processor because he thinks that by cracking the code of the processor and these, he will revolutionize everything. How, like this stereotypical things like a pilot, how a driver like vehicles that without drivers, and all these things that really start to exist in our environment right now, kind of AI and kind of like these interesting technologies. And his wife comes up from behind and surprises him. And weren't you supposed to take the kids to the raging waters, which is this water attraction, I guess? And he's like, oh, I'm so close to cracking this, and if I just, and she kind of convinces him, and the kids come in and say, okay, raging waters. And this scene is just put there so that the contrast of Sarah, she thinks of Dyson as this killer, but he's just a guy that he wants to do good, but the technology is kind of taken from killer machines in the first place, so how can it be good? But he doesn't know this. He just starts to get into this technology. And then they cut back to Sarah and John and the other Terminator in the car, and they arrive at the desolated place with this former friend of Sarah's. I think they're some military buddy or something, but his name is Enrique and he's Mexican, I think. And they kind of introduce one another to each other, and it's kind of fun. Enrique kind of look at the Terminator, who are you? And John kind of says, well, that's my uncle, Uncle Bob. And the Terminator kind of looks at John like, Uncle Bob, because it's like funny. I don't know, it's just stupid. Bob is like a generic name. But then John and Sarah kind of talks to Enrique. They need a new car. They need to get away. And he also tells Enrique that he needs to get out of this place because it's going to be, maybe something bad is going to happen. And then John and the Terminator goes down to the weapon stash that Sarah's had all this time at Enrique's place. And they gear up and kind of picks everything up. And the Terminator kind of finds this minigun, this railgun. He's just looking at it and looks at John and he kind of smiles because he's learned how to do that. He's like, yeah, that suits you. This is kind of like the learning computer kind of thing. And it's, and also John is telling his backstory and what he thinks to this Terminator, because John didn't really have a father, and the Terminator kind of is his father figure for him because he's, the only thing he got, basically. And then Arnold's Terminator character and John, they fixes a car. And then John Connor asks the Terminator to give him a high five, and he basically hits his hand like high five, and it hurts his hand. And Sarah, she's watching this, and she kind of like, she sits at the table and she falls asleep. And she has the same dream as before, and there's this nuclear explosion and a flash. She wakes up. And she takes a car and just leaves because she realized that if she kills Dyson before this happened, none of it will happen. This future will be forfeit and everything will be fine. And a little bit later, John and the Terminator kind of realize that she's going after Dyson, so they basically rush after her. And we cut to Dyson working in front of his computer at home, and Sarah is up on a hill. She's moving in on a hill, and she's having this automatic M16 or M4, basically an assault rifle, and she's basically just aiming in at him. And Dyson's son, Miles' son, Danny, he's playing with his car, his remote control car, and he drives into the leg of Miles, and he kind of, Danny, what are you doing? He kind of bows down, pick up the car, and Sarah basically shreds the windows and everything just fires in, and everything becomes, there's basically like nothing left, and he kind of lies there, and Miles tells his children or wife and kid just to leave, and then Sarah comes in and tries to kill him, but she can't really pull the trigger, and Danny kind of tries to protect his dad. And then John and the Terminator, Arnold, kind of arrives there, and they basically stop her from doing it. And then when everything is calmed down, the Terminator kind of, well, John asks the Terminator to show Miles what he really is, because basically showing Miles what this technology will do. So the Terminator kind of gets a knife and he cuts up his arm and reveals the metal skeleton underneath, and he kind of tells Miles, listen to me very carefully, and he kind of explains the plot of like what will happen and everything. And Miles kind of, he agrees with this, and he says, like, I feel like throwing up because you accuse me of something that I haven't really done yet, but there's a way we can fix this. We can go down to Cyberdyne tomorrow, and we can basically destroy everything. And Sarah, that's not good enough. We're gonna go now, right now, and do it. And Miles says, okay. And they basically go down there and check that out. And they basically go down there, and meanwhile this is happening. The T-1000 arrives, I think on a motorcycle, at Miles' house, and he realized that Miles isn't there for some reason. They kind of follows up, and he kind of gets this message that someone is breaking into Cyberdyne, and they kind of explain what's happening, and he kind of rushes over there. And also before that, like Miles and Sarah and John and the Terminator arrives at the desk, and they kind of overpowers this guard and tie him up in a bathroom, and they rig up everything and start to destroy everything there. And meanwhile this is happening, and the other guard is discovering the one tied up in the bathroom, and he basically calls in all the cops. And I think this is when the T-1000 actually realizes what's happening, and he rushes over there. And then they Miles and everybody, they rig up the bombs to basically blow up, and they destroy the servers and everything. And John is trying to hack this one door, basically the one with the keys, so they can get to the first Terminator's processor, so they can destroy that and the arm and everything. And then the police moves in, and so what's happening now is that the Terminator kind of picks up this minigun, and he promised John that he wouldn't kill anybody, and he wouldn't. He just kind of scares them off and kind of make them retreat. And he uses a grenade launcher they found in Sarah's locker or lockup weapon stash, destroys a few cars. There's no casualties, and then the SWAT team moves in, and they basically pin down Sarah, and the Terminator kind of pull her through a wall to safety, but Miles is left there and he gets shot, and he's holding the remote detonator in hand, and Sarah and the other, they kind of just leave this to me or something, he says, and they leave, and then the SWAT teams move in, and John kind of cracks the code, and they take the arm in the process, and they're out of there. So basically Miles drops the detonator, and it explodes, and the Terminator moves out to the remaining SWAT force or something like that. He uses tear gas and everything. He just walks into the bullet hellfire, and he gets a van, and he goes back and he picks them up, and they leave. And then the Terminator T-1000 arrives, and he steals a chopper, and he follows them, and because the Terminator stole a police van, it's full of this assault rifles and guns and stuff, so the chopper is following them with the T-1000 in it, and he's kind of shooting. Well, the other Terminator is driving Sarah and John down the road, and John is covered in body armor, and Sarah is kind of shooting at the chopper, and there's like this chopper chase, and a chopper flies under bridges and over bridges. It's kind of a cool thing, because this is a hard thing to do. I think it's practical effects, all of it, no CG or anything like that. And then the Terminator kind of breaks the van, and the chopper kind of slams in the back, and they basically destroys the chopper, and the Terminator and Sarah and John basically need to find another ride. So they do that, and the T-1000 kind of crawls out of the wreckage and steals this huge tank tanker, kind of like a truck with liquid nitrogen in it, and he follows them down, and they drive into a steel mill, and the one of the guys in the steel mill kind of sounds the alarm, and the car that the Terminator and the Sarah and John is in, they kind of crash, and they try to basically get out of there, and they crash, and then it's kind of a stupid scene because John and Sarah is driving the car while the Terminator climbs up on the top of the tanker, which the T-1000 is driving while moving, mind you, and he takes Sarah's assault rifle and kind of fills the T-1000 full of bullets, and he kind of turns the wheel, and they slide into the steel mill, and the alarm is sounded, and the Terminator jumps off, and it kind of, and the T-1000 kind of gets up, but there's a leakage in the liquid nitrogen tank, and it kind of freezes up, and then there's this famous line when the Terminator takes up his gun, and the T-1000 is just frozen solid from the liquid nitrogen, and he just pops a bullet, and he says, "Hasta la vista, baby," and it kind of explode into a million small metal pieces. It's kind of an awesome, cool effect. But because it's a steel mill, it's actually kind of warm, so the liquid nitrogen kind of melts or kind of gets to room temperature, whatever. So the T-1000 kind of reforms, and they're hunted in the steel mill. And so they basically get separated, and the Terminator gets beaten down by the T-1000, and he kind of gets pinned down by an iron bar, and then the T-1000 kind of goes after John and Sarah, and he actually catches up with Sarah, and he tells him to call out for John, and she refuses, and I think she kind of escapes him some way, to drop down or something, kind of escape him, and then the T-1000 kind of masks himself as Sarah and goes after John, and he is limping to kind of imitate that the injuries that Sarah really has, but then the real Sarah comes up behind him and basically tells John to get down, and he realized by looking at the T-1000's leg that something is not right, because it's kind of melted into the grid, the railing grid kind of thing, and Sarah opens fire with her shotgun and kind of forces him down almost to the melting pit, but the last bullet kind of, it doesn't knock him over, he just puts up his finger like, and then he goes for Sarah, and then the Terminator comes back with his last strength, and he has this rocket kind of gun, grenade launcher thing, and he blows the T-1000 into this crap thing, I don't know, like into this weird shape, and he falls down into the liquid steel, and it kills him, and they kind of have a brief breather, and then John kind of gets upset because there is one more chip left in the head of the other Terminator, which is the one that it's kind of hard for John to kind of leave it at that. And the Terminator says, I can't self-terminate because it's against my programming. So Sarah lowers him down into the steel, to the molten steel, and John has to watch. And the Terminator kind of goes down there, and he lets go, and he kind of gives the thumbs up, and he goes down into the melted steel, and everything shuts off. And then they kind of there's this a bit of a monologue kind of thing, and you see the road, kind of the lines in the road as a car goes, you see the lines in the road, and that's how the movie ends. The future is unwritten or something like that. And that's the end of the movie. So can I recommend this movie? Absolutely. It's one of the better Terminator ones. I mean, and the special effects are amazing, and it's one of those, like, the whole effect of the T-1000 is one of those kind of cool things, because it looks like liquid metal. It's kind of like the early kinds of effects, but it looks really good by today's standards also. and you have the a lot of practical effects in the beginning of the movie showing off the war and what happened to the human race. And I mean, old elderly movie. This was made in 1991, I think it was. It's kind of that sweet spot where they kind of have a little bit of CG that is kind of okay, and they have cool special effects, explosion and stuff, and make it look really good. It's not like today when it's like cheap, or some effects can be cheap. So yeah, I can really recommend this movie, and the whole series as a whole is kind of good. So well, yeah, thanks for watching, and take care.